This here is the boat that we live on. My name's Andy and I'm married to Melissa, and with our two boys, Jack and Oliver, we live aboard our Bowman 46 sailing yacht. Now, we bought her a couple of years ago, and since then we've been getting her ready to go off and sail to all far-flung different places. But we're currently in Portland in the UK, in Dorset, enjoying the winter. It's horrible weather, and while Melissa is away, I need to prioritise jobs that I can't do with a 2-year-old baby pottering around downstairs. So with that in mind, despite the fact I've got several other jobs on the go, I'm tackling some jobs that require pulling up the floorboards and using paints and nasty things that I don't want to do with a baby on board. Now, our water tanks, there are 4 water tanks. 4 water tanks in our boat. They're built in, they're part of the hull. I can't remove them, I can't replace them with stainless, they are part of the boat. Now, so far we've been using bladders because the original water tanks had been modified by a previous owner. The baffles had been cut out, the lids had been cut off, and bladder tanks had at some point been installed. They weren't with the boat when we got her, so we've put our own bladder tanks in. But the bladders have very, very limited capacity. So what I want to try and do is recommission the original tanks from the boat as far as I possibly can. I've taken the bladder out of one of our tanks, and I'm going to start on that one. This is one of the built-in water tanks. It originally had baffles in and lids on, and was a solid potable water tank, and that's what I want to return it to, because the capacity is much, much more. In that side we have a bladder. We did have a bladder in this side as well, but I've taken it out. So in that side we have a 150 litre bladder, but the tank itself, it's got far more capacity than that if I can get it back into working operation. I've got quite a bit of work to do repairing the tank to make it work again. The thing that's concerning me is when I took this all apart, I removed the joist. Can you see this darker area here, which was the joist that was holding up the seat base? Fine. I removed that because it was a bit damp and a bit rotten, and I was thinking, well, that's just, you know, years and years of condensation. I unearthed it again this morning, and there was a damp area at this end, and it made me want to cry. I'll show you. This area here, can you see this? It's damp. This is the old horrible matting that's been used to bond in the piece of wood that the seat bases were screwed to. So what I'm doing is just grinding this back to see what's what, but this could turn into a big drama. This really could. When we bought the boat, she'd been ashore for over a decade and had lots of rainwater in her. We did have a survey which identified some moisture, but that was put down as non-critical and something we could address at some point. Now, old boats have very thick, solid hulls, but then as time went by, some manufacturers started using cord hulls. Nowadays, most hulls are generally not cord, but some are. Our boat is old, so she has a thick hull, and she's one of the earliest ones to have a cord hull, but the outside skin is still many times thicker than a modern boat. So even if you remove the whole of the inner skin and the whole core, she's still got a thicker outer skin than most modern boats. So what I'm doing here isn't dangerous, but it is a genuine worry, because if we find that the whole core is screwed, it could mean major repairs. Potentially, we would need to gut the whole boat, cut out the whole of the inner skin, remove all the foam core, replace it all, and then skim back over it. That would be a massive job. So there's definitely water, a tiny little speck, but it's coming out of the foam core in the hull. Now, as you know, this boat was sat ashore for a very, very long time, and we've had some fairly decent sailing since we've had her. So I'm actually going to cut out a tiny little patch of the inner skin above the core, examine that and see what we find, and then we can dry that out. Can you see the water dribbling out of here? I just want to take off a tiny little area. I'm a little bit happier. It's better news than I thought. Look at this. This is the core of the boat, which is a honeycomb square section foam, and it's got lines going vertically and lines going horizontally. The foam itself is bone dry. There is no moisture in the foam. But where water has got behind it over time, you know, the boat's 50 years old, there is water in the channels in between. But I'm not a marine engineer, so I'm going to go at this maybe more cautiously than some people would. So I'm taking out squares like that, about 2 inches, and I might cut out a couple more, maybe one here and one here, just as trial places to see, is there damp in other areas? It stands a chance there is, because this is clearly had damp in it. It's not leaking anymore. There's no more moisture coming out of here. Right, so that's completely stopped leaking. I'm happy with that. The next thing I'm going to do, I've put a pipe on the outlet and a bung in the pipe. The inlet isn't connected, it's over here. So I'm going to put some water in the tank. Not a huge amount, I'm just going to fill it to maybe half full, and leave it for several hours to see if there are any leaks in the tank. Can't see any leaks. It's all looking good so far. I am going to rebuild these the baffles in the tank. Is the exit pipe leaking? No, that's all fine. I want to fill the tank high enough and leave it for long enough to know that it's not just going to pour all its water into the bilge. I don't want to drop stuff into these tanks while they're full of water. And I've got the perspex that I took out of the cockpit enclosure, because Dave, would you believe, has not only done the stainless like magic, but he's put us a brand new windscreen into the front of the enclosure as well in 6mm. So why am I putting perspex in? Well, firstly, I want to be able to keep an eye on this. Secondly, I think that they'll make perfectly good tops, even if I then put a plywood border all the way around, nice and thick, and I leave a viewing, you know, that perspex. I say perspex, it's polycarbonate, and it's 4 or 5mm thick. So if I then cut a piece of marine ply to go on top of this with a viewing hatch in the top, and then an openable hatch, I can visually see inside the tank. They'll be super strong, and it means that even if they're no good, in the meantime, I've got something to stop things falling in the tank. But also, I need to level off some of this uneven fiberglass. So I'm going to make a bog of epoxy to squish this down onto when I make the lids properly. And fiberglass won't stick to this polycarbonate. I can put some brown tape on it if I want it to be even easier to get off. But I should be able to just push this down and it will assume a nice level surface once I've bolted it down nice and tightly. And that will, pump's going off. That will mean that when I take it off and I put a proper rubber seal on, we've got a really nice mating surface. So rather than just throw this polycarbonate away and spend money making temporary lids. Oops. Hold on. Everyone keeps telling me to wear protective eyewear when I'm doing this kind of job, so I'll be good just in case I get a piece of hot plastic in my eye, because I've got to admit, even when a little shard of this hot plastic lands on your hand, it's hot and it hurts. So that in the eyeball, I agree, it's better to do this, isn't it? Now, we've got the lids on the tank, so we're not going to drop my tools and my drill bits in there. The other thing that I want to have a look at is all this wiring. Can you see this? Let me just angle you down a fraction. When we first got the boat and we did the wiring, I took the wiring for the mast lights and what have you. I do that. Is that better? Yeah, you can see that. I took the wiring from the mast in a continuous line with no breaks all the way to the switch panel. Kind of nice theory, but it just doesn't make it practical. And if you ever need to take the mast off again, which I don't think we will, it just makes it a lot more problematic. And it means that you've got more diagnostic issues if you want to trace a fault. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tidy all this up, because I don't like it. I think it's just messy and horrible. Okay, the water tank has been full all night with its temporary lids on to stop my stuff falling in there, and there isn't a drop of water in the bilge. I gave it a bit of a sponge out and a dry yesterday just to make sure that, you know, I could monitor the situation. There isn't a drop of water in there, so that's great. So what I'm going to do now, because it's literally just clean tap water, is I'm going to empty it into the bilge and pump it overboard, which is completely fine. There's nothing in the tank, it's bone dry, and it is only tap water. There's no nasties in there whatsoever. But that means once I've got the tank empty, I can start looking again at what I'm going to do about these lids. Even the piece of tissue paper that I put around the opening where I've got this silicone tube is dry. I've just got a bung in the end of the tube, so come on, you're going to come out for me. And then I've got to figure out how to adapt this tube to go onto my John gas fittings. I can't finish vacuuming up just at the moment because every single one of my rechargeable batteries is flat. I've only got 3. I use these Stanley tools, the Stanley Fat Max stuff, and it's really good. It's not as good as DeWalt or Makita. I'd love to get that kind of stuff, but the Stanley Fat Max is really good. But I've only got 3 batteries. And the other thing you'll be asking is, why haven't you got a guard on the grinder? It's because I bought this grinder second hand. It didn't come with a guard and I can't find one to fit, but it's by far the best grinder I've got. It's got a hand guard, so I'm just super careful with it, but I do know that's really bad practice. I don't advise anybody to do it. I'm a very, very bad naughty boy for doing it, and as soon as I can, well, I've been looking out for a guard to fit, but I just can't find one. But yeah, I'd like to get a whole suite of Makita stuff really, but there you go, all in good time. I can't spend money on tools when I've got a tool, and I need to spend. I'm nearly out of epoxy. I need to spend money on epoxy, don't I? Right. Okay, the lids are on, and you can see where I've put the extra bed of epoxy here. I stupidly, like an absolute fool, without even thinking, wiped this one with some acetone when I was doing my cleanup. So it's fine, I've got plenty more of this Perspex, so I can just cut another one of them. But that's another reason why make it out of scrap first and use these as templates in case you make a cock up like that. So that's fine. I'm going to drill the extra bolt holes, by the way, when this is done, when it's all set and finished and filled, because it's hard enough. I'm keeping these bolts because they're in good places, but it's hard enough working round them. In some ways it would have been easier to cut them all off and replace all the bolts, but I thought no, let's leave those ones in and just add the extra ones at the end. So that can dry overnight, can cure overnight, and hopefully if I'm right, this should just ping off with a little bit of persuasion and leave a reasonably nice surface to make to. I might just have to fill a few voids and what have you, but that is now suitable for Sikaflex and for sealant. So pleased with that. Still got some more wiring to do. Still need to cut out those other little pieces from over the core that we were talking about earlier. If you're wondering what that is, by the way, that's the scratch that I got earlier from taking my flipping mask off, and it really pinches. I want to install these. These go on the deck wash system. And these are the bits that I was missing last week to be able to finish plumbing it in. So I should be able to plumb the deck wash system in. So the problem I had was connecting a hose tail to the pipes, because the pipes aren't flexible, they're rigid pipe. So you need these kind of connectors, which have got a thread on one side and what's it called, John Guest fitting on the other side. See those? So you can just push fit. So what I should be able to do is put one on here like that. So the other one is going to go on here, and it's going to need a little right angle, a short piece of tube with a right angle, and then it's going to have to tee into the cold water supply up here, because what I'm going to do is I'm also going to install one of these in the saltwater pickup, and then I'm going to put in this is the saltwater pickup for the heads, so I'm going to put in a diverter valve. That way I can switch a valve when I've got it all like nicely laid out. I can switch a valve in here and I can run this pump on seawater or turn the valve and run it on fresh water. And my standard practice, I think, is going to be to run it on salt water 90% of the time, but then just flush this through with some fresh water to make sure the pump doesn't degrade too quickly, because obviously salt water is a lot more corrosive. I haven't got the right fittings to do that today, so I'm just going to put the fresh water fitting on today and see if it works. Yeah, that's now working. I haven't got the attachment on the end, but that just needs a hose lock on the end, and that is our deck wash for washing off our chain and what have you. I'm going to go and turn it off because I don't want to waste all my fresh water, but in principle, it's going dark already. In principle, we have a working system. The last thing I'm going to do in this episode is install these. I'm not going to wire them up or anything. Well, I'm going to wire them to the stuff coming out of the mast, I think, but I'm not going to connect them up. That's going to be, you know, in the future. But this is just a continuation of the side project that I was doing earlier on.
as you can see, there's still work to do on the tanks and the wiring and lots of other things, and that's all going to continue next time. Melissa and Jack and Ollie will be back on Saturday, and on Wednesday this week I'm going with Mike to fetch back our stainless steel frame for the cockpit enclosure. So there's all kinds of jobs going on at the same time, which is why I have to kind of dip into them. I have to go on Wednesday to fetch the frame because that's when Mike's available, and that needs to be fitted straight away, so I probably won't come back to the, you know, who knows. I have to kind of be a little bit flexible, so which is why I'm kind of flitting around a little bit. And I've also got to get the boat ready and habitable for Ollie and Jack and Melissa to come back on Saturday. So thanks very, very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the episode. Please, if you're not a subscriber, please subscribe, because we've now got, I think, about 55% of our viewers are not subscribed. So if you're not a subscriber, please click the subscribe button, and if you click the notification bell, it'll tell you when our next episode is, which is every Wednesday, as you know. Thanks again to our patrons who support us, and anybody that's donated through Patreon and Coffee and PayPal. We are finding life financially tough, as everybody is at the minute, so you know, it's a hard time for everybody, isn't it? So your help in this is extremely, extremely valued. See you next week, guys. Love you all to bits. Keep commenting, keep liking. We love you all, and we'll see you next time. Bye.